Yeah, perfect.
Oh, you're in the same shirt too, eh? It's like you never left.
I made sure that I know how to do these kind of things, you know.
It's the same day.
I used to have to do this with the press. You had me thinking of old stories yesterday, but sometimes we'd be somewhere doing an interview and it'd be whatever, but I had to run and we get it and they couldn't because they had it. I'd have to come back today and I made sure my hair was the same, the suit. And, yeah.
How you been though? You had a good day?
Yeah, I've had a really good day today, you know, and I got to reflect on a lot of what we talked about yesterday and put it to practice. I just found out somebody I know lost their their partner. They've been dating for about 6 months, but you know in their late 40s, early 50s, and person died on the weekend of a ATV accident. And so they're dealing with that. And they had to stay there on site for an hour watching whatever that looked like, which I know what that was like, right? So that person is going to need some serious help, right? And it got me reflected on the I was talking about crying and stuff, and it really made me think about how was I able to not show tears because the emotion was still there, and then how was it going from not being able to feel my feelings, wanting to, but unable to knowing I need to or I'll die, basically, right? Okay, so going to that, and then the point you go too far, clearly you can't walk around, and every time I say something hurtful, unintentionally or intentionally, if you cry, that's not right either, right? And it's how do you find that balance? Well, I got thinking about that like today because I let it just happen organically, cry on the thing yesterday, right? And I could have chose not to do that. So it made me reflect on why. And it comes back to if I want to cover from addiction or recover from the trauma, I actually need to do what my body's telling me not to do because it learned how to do things improperly. So I can't trust my natural instincts. So for me, the risk of putting up walls to not cry, which is appropriate. You can't cry every time. You can't always cry in public. You can't cry in a business meeting. Meaning you shouldn't, right?
Right.
But for me, the risk of me heading back to that other place where walls come up, that's what it's like. Wall, bang, can't feel anything. And it's a rapid succession, right?
And you're numb.
Yeah. And for me, I can feel I know I have the ability to snap up a fall and just kind of get composed quickly. The risk of doing that and then my automatic system takes over again, which is the wrong one, is too high for me. It's better for me to run the risk. Well, this might look a little unusual or people might think I'm too sensitive or, maybe people think I'm sadder than I am. That's okay. That the price I'd have to pay to have those walls come up automatically all the time. Right, because that's my natural teenage young adult. It's too great. Well, that's why I go that way now. That's why I fight the resistance to not have every feeling to have its full impact immediately. That's a personal choice. I didn't really make that clear to you, but that's just something for you as you battle some of your stuff. And that's what they are. They're battles, right? Like a hockey game. 7-3, you still won the game, right? And so you got to come up with ways of knowing that this tricky brain. You're using your dysfunctional brain to solve your problem. And that's why you have to have a we program. We, whether it's God or we, whether it's me or someone else or whatever, it allows.
Or even what we're doing today, this, exactly.
Definitely. And for me, I've got some guys that I do this once every 2 weeks, maximum once a month, a group of 8 guys. And that's something, if you don't have it, that's something for you to develop. And I never started that till I was 48. I've changed all my friends. We didn't get to that yesterday. I don't have any of the friends that I used to have as an investment banker, basically. Close. The ones that were average friends, they're still average friends. But the guys that I thought were close, they're all gone because they weren't close. And they weren't real. And they're gone. And I don't need to see them and I don't want to see them.
And what were they like?
Friends.
What were they like at the time, and what made you think they were your friends? And then how did you realize?
We'll do this, then we can go on. So for me, and it's my fault too, because if I didn't know myself, how can I expect somebody else to know me? Mm-hmm. If I don't really understand myself, which I clearly didn't, and I do now, like I am super, super aware. Psychologists are amazed at how much I know how all this body, soul stuff works. Right. Okay. And I can do it on a dime, right? if I didn't know any of that, then I wasn't aware of myself and I couldn't understand myself. Yet we, oh, I want to be understood. Oh, she doesn't understand me, or all there, whatever. That's a crock. So, but that was me. And if I was pretending to the world, which I thought was smart, that was one of my talents, by the way. I was a chameleon, which I thought was a good thing. I could be anything to anybody, and it allowed me to have a diverse group of clients, a diverse group of friends, and because I could fit in, not because I was a phony. It's kind of like, I don't have one car that I like, or one color that I like, or one song genre that I like. I'm lucky that way. So I have different types of personalities and different interests, from rock concerts to the ballet. Okay, and in any event, so for me, the friends I was picking were the ones that like to have fun, and that meant more fun, which meant more going out, and then you know, people. And since I didn't really want to talk about anything like this, my friends were the same way. So, you know, typically what you had is that since work was the most important, they were people associated with work. They were either people that could give me work or people that I hired to work for me. So like lawyers, investment bankers, athletes, because I played sports. But then there'd be guys that were, you know, they were the high adrenaline guys, you know, aggressive guys, competitive guys. You know, and I'm looking for people that have the same opinion, because I want to have us all be like-minded, because that's, you know, so I was very narrow-minded and closed-minded, so we were all kind of like. And then, you know, our topics all revolved around the same kind of stuff, you know, work first, who's an idiot, talk about everybody else, talk about women, you know, and all our work accomplishments and sports accomplishments, right? And a lot of socializing. So, you know, I drank, but I didn't drink a lot, but I was in drinking settings, or work settings. And you know, the people that were there, as much as they were always there, hey, what are you up to? Or they're always inviting me out or whatever, I was just their wingman, or they were just my wingman. And we used each other without knowing it. But as I started growing and becoming aware and wanted more of, I call it the real stuff, and less of the other, like not 0 to 100, you know, they didn't. And I could see that my friends were phony. They weren't really there when I needed them. And, you know, as one example, when I went to rehab and came out, my best friend knew what I was going through. He knew I didn't want to drink. He knew then I got to watch what places I go. I got to watch what things I do. I can't associate with any of a certain type of person. Like, I explained that, and they know that. And I don't want anybody to stop what they do. And I want them to drink their beers, and we can still go. But I had some of these guys, we'd be out, and I go, 11 o'clock, guys, I'm going home. And I'd be visiting them and staying at their house in their city, and they're not. They'd stay out, and at 2 in the morning, we're in biker bars. Well, you know what goes on in biker bars.
Yep.
And these are lawyer friends of mine, friends. They're putting me in dangerous situations where I'd have to leave and go stay in a hotel, because I don't want to be exposed to that, right? And anyway, that's just one example. And they're all still the same. And it's not like I didn't get divorced, but they've all gotten divorced, and they're all still very self-centered, and they still use the bottle too much. That's my opinion. It's self-righteous on that. But
the ego, right? The ego.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, and I don't know a lot about you, Zach, but like when I'm watching what you're doing, we all have to try to have a living. We all have to have a pursuit of something that gives us a feeling of passion. We have to meet our financial needs, and money's a bit of a scorecard, but it can all get out of balance, and that's where I was. And then you can still be successful like you, and you can start to try to look at what else can I do with my life. Well, you don't give up your capitalist mentality. I don't believe in Marxism. I'm a capitalist. Of course
not. Yeah.
So you can still do that, but you can try to do it in a way. And I'm going to go. In my career, I could have done things differently where I would have felt better about myself, right? And that's where I see you now at a much younger age than me. And by the time I figured out, I'm like, you know what? For my kids, I'm also going to quit work. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. I already had a good run. But if I had found out what I did at 35, I would have had a much happier career ending for the next 10 or 15 years. I probably wouldn't have made as much money. I would have still been as famous. Mm-hmm. I would have felt better about myself. The stuff I was doing to win was actually having a detrimental effect on my feeling good about myself. And I didn't know that. And most people don't. Because when you're self-centered and you're not trusting the world and you think everybody's bad, you don't really understand the impact that you're having on other people, negative impact. Does that make sense?
100%.
And you're probably much more aware of that now. So then you tend to act maybe 10% different, softer, gentler, empathetic. I was zero in those areas. And so were my friends. So when we think we're all there, we're all loyal, they're there to use me for my money. They're there to use me to get me to hire them. They're there because Tom Buzz is just a fucking fun guy. And they're there because they need to tell their wife they're out with someone. It's that obvious to me now, but it wasn't then. But I mean, if the bars and restaurants are open now, if you went to any restaurant, I own two of them, and you just watch who sits at the bar every night or stands in and socializes, you'll see the same women and men, successful, whatever. And after a while, you'll realize they're really lonely. And then they have the same group of friends, and they all have the same things. And what they don't know is they have the same stuff of us they're running from. And they're using that, not that it's killing them yet, but it means they really haven't lived life to its max. You know, when I heard about that person, they lost it. Like, I knew what that person felt like. And when I called, they welcomed. Yeah, I got this heartbreak and the pain, and I know what they're gonna have to go through. When I reached out, they were happy. Like, I'm not that took away their pain. And then I got a nice long message later, and they from like, I've got them on the right track now, because I said, trust me, write this down. You're gonna need to do A, B, C, and D eventually. But that was enough to let them, it's kind of like having food in your cupboard, and they say you might be locked up for 2 days. There's a security to that. For me, it's books, by the way. If I've got books on that shelf that I haven't read on self-awareness or getting over child abuse or emotional, whatever it is, because I got stuff that I haven't read, that's my food shelf. That's what I use for my security blanket, believe it or not. So for other people,
books?
Pardon?
Is there always books for you? Or?
No, this is where I had to change. I hated reading. I didn't read as a kid, and I didn't know why. I now know why. And but when I got into business, it's one of the things I did do to differentiate. I read very select things, but I have some brain impairment that, you know, again, that was caused by my environment. So my ability to remember certain things is like the lowest 7%, which if that's all we focused on in life, I'd look like a person that's mentally
of course
deficient. But that's not what we focus on, luckily. But and so because of that, I didn't like to read. I can't read something and retain it right away.
Takes a while.
So takes a while. And so, but I've learned techniques the same way as I was ADHD for sure, but it's never diagnosed. But I've learned ways that doesn't affect me. I've got little things that I do that are kind of obsessive compulsive, but we take that away. And part of it's that memory thing. And I have super memory on one end, and it comes from being alert and being ready. My brain learned what was relevant and what wasn't relevant to staying alive. And guess what wasn't relevant? Your name. I can't remember a name, and I've never been able to. And trust me, it makes it socially awkward. But this is where I'm reading about the vagus stem. If your brain needs to make sure you're not attacked, caught off guard, like a chaotic family home environment, if that's the main goal and it keeps pushing down other needs, like remembering somebody's name's a social skill, guess what my brain was doing without me knowing it? And it's the wiring in the brains that changed. Mine overemphasized and developed over here, and it shut others off from growing. That's the theory. And I think that's probably why I can remember some things really well and some things not at all.
Is it day-to-day tasks you forget at times, or mundane tasks?
Yeah. I've been making lists since I was 16 years old. I've got lists for everything. I've got lists right here.
Well, look, I write everything down and I highlight it, and yep.
Yeah, that's how I read now, and I'm okay with that. So I know the first time I read a book, the first chapter, no pressure, just read it. Okay. Now I'm going to read it again and put marks on the outside columns of what's important on that page, if anything. Then I read it the third time and I underline the phrases. Now, trust me, I'm going to nail that exam, but I don't go to the next chapter till I've done that. So reading for fun is hard, and that's the way you have to read. Now, if we're talking, and this word, but videos, YouTubes, yeah. I remember fucking everything, especially facial expressions. Okay, and that's why I like texting. I've never liked because I can't read what's really going on.
Context.
Phone calls are better. This is better. And then in person's the best for me.
Oh, of course.
Because I feel safer. When you feel safer, you can retain things.
Is it hard for you to feel safe during texting or emailing? Is it because you can't read that person's emotion?
So
Hey, Tom, quickly before we get started, yesterday, should I remove it or leave it in there? Some of it.
It's up to you. I don't care about that. Yeah,
as long as you don't care. Yeah.
No, I don't care. That was just one of the more open ones where I really worry about what I say about my parents or my dad, because I love them, and my dad just passed too, right?
Yeah, because I didn't know that, because you were just talking about him not long ago, and now he's gone. Yeah. How long ago was this? Last year, right?
Died in August. Yeah. Died in August. He died of COVID, I say, because not that he caught the disease, is that a man his age, with the way that he didn't deal with things, which he felt was appropriate, the way he compartmentalized things, the way that he didn't like to talk about my kids anymore, and he would cry on his own, but he wouldn't show it. He was uncomfortable with us. That's how my dad dealt with stuff, like a lot of men in that. So you got a guy that can't deal with emotions, and so loneliness isn't something that they're really good with when they get older. They don't know how to reach out and share, and if your friends are dying, you're not making new ones because it's not something you believed in, right?
Nope.
And but at an older age, my dad, when COVID hit, he has his own fears, and to begin with, when COVID hit, they really got amplified. And then some of his friends were more anxious than him, right? So they're scared. They're not going out. Nobody's visiting them. He's afraid of us to visit, and months and months and months of that. And then he got sick, and then he went to the hospital. And again, mental health talks about our need for connection. Well, when you're in a hospital, it's bad enough. You're in there, it's sterile, everybody's in uniforms. Be in a hospital and there's nobody else there. Be in a hospital and you can only have one visitor a day. And you're not a guy that's dealt with his emotions, and you just been traumatized like everyone else during COVID. Well, he couldn't stand it. He didn't think he was going to get better. So eventually he said, I want out of here. I want you to let me die. And he took advantage of Canadians' law to allow self-suicide.
Medical assistance in dying.
Yeah, well, I challenge that, because the original term was medical assistance in suicide, but we've now made it a socially acceptable term, and I'm going to go suicide because that's what it felt like for me watching my dad die for 10 days. I did not enjoy it. I didn't agree with it.
Were you there when he passed away?
I'll tell you what I did. I wouldn't tell anybody else. I'm watching the family dynamics, and it's a tough time, and it's bad enough when you hear someone's going to die, but when you actually have them decide, and now you got to go 10 days left, 9 days left. We must have did 8 last dinners. Okay, we're doing another last dinner. And of course, he's getting healthier at home, and he's getting happier at home. And, he's drinking a couple of drinks and eating a steak, and the next night it's pizza and Chinese food. But now he's only got 3 days left, and I'm going, I know he doesn't have a year or two in him. He's got a month. He could do his own funeral. Let's have speeches, and he's there. But nope, we're going to do it. Tunnel vision, bang, it's going to be this way. And I'm watching it, and I decided I don't need to share what I'm going to do. I think I know what I'm going to do based on my feelings and what's good for me and my emotional health. I don't have to decide today. And as we got closer, and that morning, I knew what I was going to do. And I knew I wasn't going to tell anybody except my fiance. And I knew I was only going to give her 15 minutes notice of what I was going to do. And then she's free to do what she wants. And as the doctors are all in there and he's laying in his bedroom, I said to my fiance, I said, I'm walking in with everybody. I'm standing closest to the door. I'll be close to the bed. I'm not staying. And just before they go to do the injection, I'm going to halt the process. And I'm going to tell Dad that I love you. I'm not going to watch you die. That doesn't mean I don't love you as much as the other people here, but I'm just not doing it. I don't want to see it. I respect that you want to leave now. I know you don't believe in God, but I hope you join my boys. And I'm really glad I had you as my dad. I turned around, I walked out. I got on my bike like I always do, and I just rode and rode and rode. And I knew eventually he must be dead by now, but I don't know exactly when he died. I didn't see that look on his face, which I've seen before with people. And, I was at peace.
What did he say? Was he in a coma at this time, or was he talking?
By the time he got home from the hospital, he was weak. They thought he was going to need to be on oxygen and a walker, and his organs weren't working right, and his heart wasn't working right, and they thought he might have 3-4 months. They didn't think they could turn him around anyway, completely, but maybe another year. But he wasn't going to wait. So when he got home, he was weak, and they said, we'll be over to visit you and we'll set it up, and they did that within 4 days. And by then he's already a little stronger, but once he starts eating meals, which he refused to do in the hospital, once he started walking around with his walker, which he refused to do in the hospital, once he had people around him, which he had none in the hospital, he came back to life to some degree. Not quality like 2 years ago, but he probably had another good quality month in him, but he was sticky. You have the right to change that. So like the doctors kept coming back every 3 or 4 days to check on him and to say, are you sure? And he'd go, yes. And other people around wouldn't say anything. I go, Dad, are you really sure? Like we can push this off another week. We can push this off another couple of weeks. You could do your own funeral. I'm an outside of the box thinker. Instead of having people come over now to say goodbye I didn't like the way they came over and started they have this pre-script they do, like, who are you? Who are you?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting there like, guys.
Last thing you need right now. Yeah, last thing you need, right?
I didn't like any of the process. I didn't like the fact that in the hospital that they didn't realize that he was depressed. I think my dad was depressed. And in depression, you don't make smart decisions, right?
This is giving up a bit, right? Yeah.
Right. Well, the forms say that they won't let you do a medically assisted death or suicide
until you sign
unless you're involved. They never asked me. I would have said, my dad's depressed. He's been locked up for 5 months. He hasn't left his backyard. His girlfriend didn't visit him for 2 months. My dad, it doesn't handle lonely well. So my dad, as far as I'm concerned, he's clinically depressed.
So do you think,
but nobody asked.
Looking back now, do you think the choice was, like, are you pissed off with the decision that was made? Or have you come to peace with it in some bizarre way?
In my recovery world, I've learned there is no upside to even asking myself those questions or answering them from others. But I'm going to, in this case, it's a matter of, this is for trying to help people. So I don't look back. I don't want to look back. I was angry and angry for a long time about a lot of things, and I've had to come to grips with that, and that's my issue. He's gone, and I know that when it comes to, I got to look at it for what I've done is I've recently used it to help me improve my recovery from what I call my spikes of PTSD or potential slides into depression, which risks me on my addiction side. So what I've done is, how can I be mad at my dad for not trying to maximize the last month of his life if I'm sitting around here moping and complaining every time the government comes out with a stupid rule? How do I be mad at my dad about not sharing with his friends while I'm sitting here and I'm not calling my friends back in Kelowna because I'm too depressed or too sad or life doesn't feel worth it today? I'm acting like my dad. So I've used that to go, you know what? I need to step up. I need to go, if this is the last day of my life, as bad as it is with a mask on. And, today they said double mask. So guess what? I
that was
put 4
funny.
on it. See my Facebook post? Good. That's Tom Budd. I need to be that Tom Budd with the 4 face masks, making fun, making a point, and then going, you know what? I'm going out for a bike ride. And my dad gave up. But my dad gave up because he didn't deal with his mental health challenges during his adult life because he didn't know how, he didn't have the tools, and didn't have the support. He wasn't me.
Tom, was it a different era? Is that what it was? There was no one talking about this openly at that time?
That's what you commonly hear now. And the answer is yes, that's the way it was. And it's an easy out. Yeah, but. There's no room for yeah, buts if you want to have growth. So that is the way it was, and it was everybody, and it was like that for a couple of decades. But when I talk to men between 70 and 90 now, 8% of them, maybe 20%, are as evolved as me and you, because they broke out of that mold themselves. And there's people that go to counseling that are 60, 65, or 70 now. And, you know, my dad refused to and didn't like it because that you can't, when you had his childhood, you don't trust people. Like when your dad physically abuses you on a regular basis, how are you going to really trust anybody, right? So, and then, so if you've been like that your whole life and it seems to have worked, then why are you going to change? And again, if feeling an emotion is painful, see, my dad didn't like me crying and he didn't let me cry, and I can be angry about that, except I saw myself do it with my kids when they were young, except I was already starting to do some work. And I realized it's not that I don't like them crying. It made me feel like a failure. It made me feel like I'm a shitty dad because my kid's crying and I don't know what to do, which means I'm a failure. And if they're crying, they're sad, and sad's a bad feeling. My kids are feeling bad, I can't fix them. So I need them to stop, because if they stop, I feel better about myself. Luckily, by the time my kids were 6 or 7, I figured that out, and now crying's good, and we talked about emotions, so I didn't do that to them, but I probably did a little, but my dad would never have gotten over that. And then if you look at the pain and work that you have to do sometimes, Zach, get to where you are, we know it's worth it. They don't, because there is no promise that it's going to work. There is no promise that all these emotions you release from therapy, talk sessions, or whatever, that pain, there's no promise that you're going to get an equivalent amount of joy.
There's no one road.
Yeah, and you have to. So anyway, he didn't buy in. Most people don't. He was already there, and so then he's already closed-minded. He's already stubborn. And this is where I go unlucky. At 48, Tom Budd saw a film. He was planning on getting out of rehab in 30 days, and he saw this film. And I went, that's me. And I signed up for another 30 days. I did not plan on going for 60 days. And in those 30 days, learning about codependency and shame and anxiety disorders and all this kind of stuff, I went, wow, I've got all that. And perfectionism, and they're showing why perfectionism is wrong. And I have all these other beliefs, like, you know, the early bird gets the worm. Yeah. Trust me, that doesn't work real well if that's all you do all the time. And I had secrets. I knew how to be quiet, not let anybody hurt me. And secrets kill. I don't have secrets now. That's why if you want to say, you know, Tom Budd suffered from cocaine, go ahead. You know, I've raged at least 3 times during COVID. I've scared my fiance with my yelling once. I'm not proud of it. And that's from my childhood. That's my old way. And I've got back, but it can't hurt me if it's a secret.
Tom, was it your dad yelling at you like that back in the day, or your family? Was it that upbringing where you got that from, the yelling and the anger?
Let's just put it this way. If I was in a really tough meeting and there was guys like Peter Pocklington and some other crazies, right, and they started ranting and raving and vocally abusing their staff like I seen them doing, screaming or yelling, I'd be just sitting there scratching my head waiting, because it didn't faze me a bit, because that was familiar. And that's why I can handle stress so well and pressure so well. And if guns started going off normally until my kids died, I'd be the calm one, because I'm used to the loud noises and the chaos. But to act the same way and to only use that tool, it doesn't mean that, you know, if you saw somebody out beating, you know, somebody that you know, or taking a hammer to your car, you're probably going to go into a rage. So we got to be really careful. So, you know, maybe I raged about something during COVID that I should have, and under the circumstances enough to make you mad. My word of raging is I'm yelling. Okay. To me, I want to be firm, tense, and let my anger out. But if I actually am yelling, I call that raging now. Yeah. Okay, so we got to be careful with it. So to me, that tells me I'm now unregulated. That tells me I'm triggered. That tells me I'm out of balance. That tells me I'm not capable of being empathetic, compassionate, or understanding. Nor is anybody going to listen to what I have to say, because they don't feel safe. But yeah, I grew up in an environment that had yelling, noise, screaming, name calling, yeah, all that kind of stuff.
You're at a high threshold.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so you got to recognize, like when we talk about children suffering from abuse, so far, let me go back. Why is all this important? If we talk about we want to have people have positive mental health, yeah, That's so they can have joy and peace and, fulfillment. Enjoy the good and the bad, right? So that's it. So you try to get there. What are the other reasons we want to promote positive mental health? If you don't promote positive mental health, you can get depressed. If you look at now, go but far in suicide, what are the main causes of suicide? The 60% biggest cause of suicide is people that were in depression. So it doesn't mean that if you're depressed, you're going to be suicidal, but when you look at who committed suicide, 60% of them were depressed. So if you could avoid depression, you've cut your suicides way back. So people look at me, and I started off early on, what's suicide prevention? How do you get them in off the ledge? How do you recognize the signs? How do you let them know they're good enough? No, suicide prevention starts with the speeches I give at university on how to stay emotionally healthy. I didn't work on my emotional health at all until I was 48, zero. I didn't work on my spiritual side till I was 48. So 0 spiritual, 0 emotional. What chance did I have of being happy anyway, Zach?
0.
0. Yeah. So anyway, if you focus on positive mental health, how to keep yourself there, how to do the things to avoid depression. That's a big part of it. And then you get into some people are prone to depression. Why are they prone to depression? Because they were mentally abused or emotionally abused. It's different. You have to go like, what is emotional abuse? And it's surprising how many parents don't know what emotional abuse is. And we all can do it a little bit sometime, which is normal. Just like we can be selfish, just like we can tell a lie. They're not our character. They're just a little bit bad behavior every now and then. But when you start to do something a lot like sarcastic all the time with your kids, criticizing everything they do, making them doubt what they're thinking, making fun of their stupid, oh yeah, I might be a garbage man one day. What are you, an idiot? You're not gonna be a garbage man, you're gonna be like whatever it is, whatever. Whenever we take away their ability to be a child, always being condescending, not looking at them when they're talking to us, telling them to keep quiet every time they want to share something. Whatever that buildup is, that's a form of emotional abuse to a 5 and 6 year old. So does that make you a bad parent? No. It means you're unaware. So if you can be aware of the things that actually could hurt a kid, then you try to do less of them. And then for me, I need to look at that for myself. If I want to have good self-esteem, I need at the end of every day know that I did my best to be a good human, including respectful on the show, including be good to my fiance, helping people out. So if I don't know what causes emotional abuse unintentionally, how do I make sure I'm not doing it? So I've read a lot about that. It's made me change my speech pattern, my tone, maybe the use of certain words. It makes me aware that I have the ability to unintentionally hurt people, and I need at the end of every day check and see if I did. And if I did, here's a big one. I've had to learn, and I need to do this. Talk, action. I need to go say sorry. I say sorry a lot now compared to usually. You couldn't get those words out. It hurt too much to admit I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know when I've teased my fiance about something that I know I shouldn't have, but that's a little Denison menace in me, gets things going, right? But, I can go correct that, because at the end of the day, if my mental health not only depends on what I eat, how much sleep I do, all my exercise, if my mental health depends on my self-esteem, I actually need to be able to go, I'm a decent guy and I've tried hard, and when I've messed up, I've admitted it. Little things like that are what make me lighter. I didn't do any of this when I worked, which is another reason I was so successful, Zach. My focus was on work. My focus was on the oil and gas business. My focus was on reading every industry journal. My focus was on attending every seminar. My focus was on every vacation I had a client with me. If there was a dinner party, it was nothing but clients and my parents. Everything I did had clients. I even got married. People that attended my wedding were clients of mine. That's how efficient I was. They did a show on me called The Nature of Risk. And in that show, I'm on 2 cell phones. This is when cell phones first came up, those flip type, no time for cameras.
Oh, yeah.
I'm on 2 different conversations at the same time on a regular basis. But I also learned in the office, don't let in certain clients, take messages, only let these calls on this main phone, take messages, and then there's a box. I grab the messages because leaving the office, and walking to the next meeting. Boy, I got my junior guys with me, one's carrying the beer. I'm doing 2 phone calls at the same time, Zach. That's insane. But boy, did I ever feel powerful and good, and I could multitask. 2 phones at the same time. I had my own gym in my office, a kitchen.
Do you miss a little bit of it, though? Those moments of power?
You can hear it in my voice sometimes, like it was a rush. It was a drug. But I didn't miss it when I retired for my kids. People are, oh, that's bullshit. I didn't. When my one son moved back with me, Dylan, people never saw me happier. Driving him to school, picking him up at school, because he was just full of energy himself. That was pretty cool. And people said I couldn't retire, Zach. People said I couldn't play golf ever. I won't play golf, and I don't take it seriously because it's not what was important. And I miss shots, and I'm okay. And I'm not swearing, I'm not cheating, I'm not dropping balls down my leg. I play a decent game, but people thought I'd unravel on the golf course, and I watch guys unravel on the golf course. Not me.
It's not your thing.
Retirement, people said you'll never be able to retire. I never missed work in the sense of I hated retirement board, because the minute I got out of work, I took on that because I was in recovery. I took on that job of helping other addicted people out. I found a niche talking to parents about the risk of their kids being addicted, or how these parents would talk to me about their kids recreating when I know they're doing more than I know. Like, oh, my kid recreates with heroin. Really? You think so? Oh yeah, he hasn't done anything else. He just did a little heroin. Really? Anyway, talking to parents, mostly of wealthy families, on how to not enable or wake up to the facts, that became a bit of a niche.
Tom, who's your friend that both his kids passed away, and he had called you or each time both of his kids had passed away? Keith or McPhail, I think.
Ken McNeil.
Ed McNeil, yeah.
Yeah, Ken McNeil.
Ken McNeil, sorry, yeah. So when you had spoke to him, was there healing for both of you? A yin and yang in a way?
Well, they say that's the case. So, but I can't speak for anybody else, right? But they say that's the case. I can say that if Ken McNeil hadn't been there, and others like Ken McNeil, because there was some others too, right. And I'm assuming Kim doesn't mind me saying his name. I don't really spout off stuff, but I'm assuming he doesn't, because he was out there and he tries to help the same way as I do. People can call me. If people know someone that's lost a child for any reason and they need someone to call, give them my number. So me talking to Ken some days was what got me through to the next day. And I'm assuming it did help him a little. He didn't call me a lot, but he was always there for my call. And I think when he lost his second one, though, he might have called. I know when I called him, he really appreciated when I would call him on the second one. And I know it's like,
do you think it might be a little like I don't know if I should put that on? Is it too sensitive if it's someone else's story? Is it bad to put that up, or you think he'll be okay? Who knows? I don't
know. I could check with him.
Yeah.
If it's something you think is good,
it was really good. I mean,
ask him. Yeah, look, I'm going to check with him. Okay. Yeah, send me a text afterwards to check on that.
Hey, how many weirdos do you get messaging you after you give your number out and they keep calling you so much or texting you?
Yeah, well, there is some.
Yeah.
And, and I have some friends that have a different personality. They think I'm way too out there. I'm way too exposed. I share way too much. And sometimes I put with the raw feelings. Like I put a post out the other night about the weekend and the Super Bowl. Oh, yeah. It was a pretty raw post. And, and I questioned myself and even asked myself, should I put this one out? Because I'm not actually doing it for me. I'm already through it. But I have the words and the feelings. I know this isn't what people are used to seeing, and this might help, right? I get tons of people are all worried about ready to take my life, right? Always. But in any event, on my website, I'd say 80% of the people that call me aren't weirdos. But 25% of that 80 are looking for my money only, or looking for the easy way to fix. I've had one weirdo who basically was going to blame me for all the problems on the earth. And, I really was so charitable and so this and that, I'd be helping him in his way to solve global warming and global shortage of food. And he started, doing some pretty weird stuff and stalking me in public. And he did it he was also doing it to another fairly well-known competitor of mine in Calgary. And so I had to, I took some measures to make sure I wasn't at risk. but that's the only bad one. I can usually tell when I'm going to go, somebody's just too far out there and their problem is too serious and they haven't done anything for themselves yet, which is an important ingredient for me. If you aren't trying to help yourself, don't ask me to give up my time for you, okay? But so I can weed those out usually. Something, again, part of my recovery, my growth, is I want to be respectful as much as I can and treat people the way that I want to be treated. And I'm going to give people the benefit of the doubt. So if somebody sends me an email, I actually typically send something back within the day. The odd time I take a couple of days because I know it's a dicey one, but I send something back. And I'm pretty good at knowing when I'm going to meet somebody for coffee and help them or whether I'm going to end this after a couple of texts.
What do you think about the Canadian Mental Health Association? I mean, the great thing is it's there, but if you're going to take your own life, the last thing I'm going to do is call the 1-800 number or the prevention line. Is there a way around this, or is there some sort of a solution or ways people are thinking of this?
So there's various organizations that have a goal and good intentions to end the stigma of mental health as a goal. And others, try to provide good mental health services. So you have a positive mental health. Mm-hmm. And then you have, some that are there for suicide prevention, I call it like a segment. So for me, in my experience, I can tell who's legitimately trying and who has good efforts. And it's hard to measure how effective any of them are, including the suicide hotline. Mm-hmm. I know myself, I shifted on how I'm spending my time where I can have an impact, that I've improved people's health, which improves or lowers suicide. So I'm not at the point of knowing which organization's the best, which of the programs are the best, which ones ought to cost, because people don't think in those terms. They thinking how much money can we raise? How do we use that money for services? How do we promote our services to also raise money and provide services? There's like a circular thing going on. And sometimes it's hard to tell, are they in the fundraising business or are they in the mental health service business, right?
But the awareness itself is out there.
Yeah. And then I haven't done it yet. It's a question I'd like to try to answer or analyze. I do it with charities in general, like of the money coming in, how much it really goes to where it's needed. Of the money coming in, how much it goes where they said it was going to go. Of the money coming in, how much is actually a benefit versus they spent it. So do we really improve mental health and what's the measure? Did we really get depression rate down? Have we really made teenagers feel more safe, more connected? I don't know I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what the measure is. But it's going to be a phase I go into. It's one of my thoughts. And part of that is that we delayed the major launch of the Payton and Dylan Budd Memorial Fund last year. It's created, there's money in it, I use it. And for every dollar that's donated to the Payton Dylan Budd Memorial Fund, I then match it. So it could grow. And that fund is just going to be for mental health, other charities besides mental health. And then there, I'm going to start to try to see of these various mental health organizations or projects or little individual people pods with a charity focus, who seem to be doing the most per dollar of effort and dollar of money. And I'm going to try to build up a war chest for mental health. I wasn't expecting COVID to happen, so now I'm dealing with 3 times the number of problems, which makes me go, what do I matter? What can Tom Budd really do? But that's a defeatist attitude. And I can't let that happen. I can explain that later. But anyway, I'm still going to do this. And COVID's there, and it's made mental health issues grow and be more challenging. But I'm going to actually try to find places for money that others haven't thought of, or I'm at least going to know of these major public names. We know who they are. I'm going to try to figure out which one of that group is the best. And I'm going to try to get the money given to me first. And then Tom Budd's going to go and negotiate where that money's spent with them, versus everybody sending it then to XYZ government organization. That's what I'm going to try to do.
That's exactly. No one knows exactly what's happening, where the funds go. We don't see much of it yet.
No. For instance, counseling is definitely needed, okay? And counseling isn't, when somebody starts talking suicide, you got to get in and get help. There's no other answer. I don't know if that's the only answer. If that answer, you've got to do something. You've got to intervene. And you also need to have some counseling for the parents. If the parents don't know anything about enabling and codependency and that they're actually shaming their kids, or if they don't understand what's the why don't you just quit? Stop drinking. It's not like that. They don't understand why their kids are fighting all the time at school, right? Well, you got to get counseling for the kids. You got to get counseling for the parents. And if you can do that, you can maybe intervene until the child or teenager can start to do something for himself. But long before that, there's families that know there's something different with their children, and they need access to resources. And it might be as simple as finding the counselors that are really dedicated to that type of work, really love what they do and have a passion. Maybe I need to raise money in the Payton, Dillon, Bud Memorial Fund, and I give each one of these counselors $10,000 to $20,000 each.
And see what they can do.
X number of kids, and then they're going to donate, and then I'm going to monitor them. How many kids you just seeing? That might mean me adding a few more staff to the Thomas Allen Budd Foundation, which I don't pay. I don't write off. I pay them separately, and the money that's given to me goes 100% to the charities. I don't write off my costs like some people do.
Mm-hmm.
Might change that, but in any event, well, the one thing about the website and these people that email me, the people that I help, I have hundreds and hundreds of people from Instagram to Facebook say, well, Tom, don't give up. You're needed. Tom, you're showing us how to do this. Tom, you're leading by example. Tom, you've helped so many people. Blah 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 blah. I don't know whether it's true. Some days I go, wow, that feels good. Other days I go, no, I'm a shithead. It doesn't. I'm wasting my time. If I go, let's assume it's true. I got a list of at least 200 people from my website that I've helped. They've told me I've helped them. If I could get 10 or 15 of those people to volunteer to the Thomas Allen Budd Foundation, give it back. Same way as I do. I don't need to spend 2 hours a day talking to people about their problem, but I do, and I enjoy it, and I feel better about myself. If I can get 10 or 15 of that 200 to volunteer, they can become the people that actually do the work that I need to do to go out and do the checkups on where the money's spent.
Be the voice or the eyes for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Anyway, we're in the process. The anniversary of both my kids' deaths is April for both of them. And I'm looking at, actually, believe it or not, I know it's probably somebody say you're taking advantage. I'm looking at launching this thing publicly. I was going to do it last year and I didn't. But I'm looking at it again for this April, where we're going to launch, do some sort of fundraising, get some more marketing on it. And then as soon as the COVID rules are up, I'm going to do the big first annual Thomas Allen Budd Foundation. I've been renamed the foundation. It's going to be called the Budd Foundation, the Budd Family Foundation. I'm going to encompass my sister and her husband, Cheryl and Wayne, and my fiance in it. So it's going to be the rebrand, have an annual gala, and all the money goes into the Payton Dillon Budd Fund. And it's going to be where I'm now asking all those that I've given money to, now lots of time to, and they've always said they'll be there. If I ever want to raise money, they're there. I'm probably now going to go, you know what, guys? I'm going to do what I said I'd never do. I'm going to ask you for money. Except I'm not going to be like anybody else and spend your money and look good. Whatever you guys all give me, whether it's 10 grand, 100 grand, $500,000, I'll match it every year. I'll match it. Nobody gives me anything that I won't then match out of my own personal money. And that's what I'm thinking of doing. And but I got to get the COVID rules lifted.
Fuck, this thing is
Yeah.
Is it bad out there for you? Or is it okay? Well, the mask.
I'm looking at the sunshine here in the ocean. The dolphins were out there earlier today. It ain't that bad for me. But, when I start letting my mind, I got to go with my mental condition. When I start letting myself know I can't come back to Canada, they're going to make me go to a motel for 3 days when I'm willing to pay all the tests in the world to say I don't have it. And I know they're just trying to keep everybody home so the money stays home. And get my anger going. So no matter how beautiful it is, my mind, because it wants to, that brother, that little monkey, it wants to get up there and make me mad. It wants me to have a resentment. Because now I might use an inappropriate coping skill. And I don't like myself for sure. So we get the cycle going. So, as nice as that is, COVID still affects me. I still got to keep myself grounded. I got to look for the positive, not the negative. I got to stop arguing with every stupid thing I hear from somebody that I don't respect. It's a battle.
Do you cut the noise out now? A lot of the bullshit? Yeah. Or try.
I can, and right now I'm there, but the honest answer is, we'll just say 3 or 4 weeks ago, I wasn't, and that's what allowed me to get here. So it's becoming aware of what really hurts you. It's becoming aware of what bothers you or irritates you. So I know I need my sleep. I know I need to eat properly. I've learned that I need to actually make sure I hydrate properly so I'm not really fatigued, because really fatigued I get irritable, right? If I notice that I've been irritable for a couple of days and I'm not hugging and whatever with fiance, all these things are signals that I might be starting to get a little unhinged. When I'm starting to bitch and complain at everything I'm seeing or reading, that's another sign, not exact, but when that's happening. But eventually when I see enough of that, I get overwhelmed. I say something I shouldn't say. I have a behavior that I'm definitely sorry for. And that's when I'm smart enough to go, I'm now at the level, I'm now overwhelmed, I've now hit my peak, and now I need to do the stuff that gets me back to where I'm in the now, I'm pretty zen, I'm chill. So it's a moving thing. So one of the big ones for me, Zach, was recognizing that this new thing, conspiracy theory, and hearing about it when it's kind of interesting. And at first it was kind of neat reading about Proud Boys and reading about QAnon, reading about fucking aliens from China, it was just something's crazy. Yeah. So anyway, I started reading that, and then some of my friends are reading it more, but they're actually believing it. And then because you're already in a bad mood, you're starting to go down that. And I found that between reading about conspiracy theories and then getting a little more fearful, because what if they're right and I'm naive and I've been blind and I've been stupid and I'm too forgiving, right? Mm-hmm. So you get a little negative, a little more worried. And then you add in the news, which I'd watch for a half hour a day. And it's not news, it's a reality show. It's an opinion show to give you their opinion, but make it think it's yours. That's my view of the news, right? When I have too much of that, I get into a negative, reactionary, non-compassionate person for anybody else that might be different. And I've at least learned what it is. And the newest one was conspiracy theory. So I've stopped reading anything about them. I needed to program myself to go, yeah, there's a grain of truth in everything. But then when I go 5G, the reset, I put it all together, I go, you know what? Kind of like God. You can choose to think there's one or choose not to think there's none. Nobody knows, but they all talk like they do. When I really look at conspiracy theories, it's not the 50-50. So by the way, I'm going to choose there is a God, and I'm going to search for meaning. And if I don't find it, I don't. But I'm going to go that way. The conspiracy theories, I'm going, no, I have to believe that the governments aren't all conspiring together. Not this big plan. And we're not going to, let's go. There's a lot of people.
Alex Jones? Have you heard of Alex Jones?
No, I don't want to offend any of your viewers. He's an idiot. He's crazy, and he's going to hurt people.
Yeah.
That's my view. Okay,
he's far, on the extreme.
He's too far. And that's the conspiracy theory doesn't mean you're right wing. No. You're far right wing, and just like on the left side, they're out too far. Mm-hmm. The middle and a little edgy is okay. I've never been right in the middle. No. I'm open to, but when I get things that are just so far out, and there is no basis, and the more I read about whatever the conspiracy theory is, and I get people that are in it. It doesn't take me more than a half hour to poke holes in it, and they just use the same name calling and stuff.
Well, and they just push it in our faces, right? They push it in our faces,
Yeah. So the bottom line is, like, I've had to go, you know what? I don't think Trudeau's linked with Biden, and Biden's not linked with China, and they're also sitting to reset, and then all of a sudden we're going to go from a semi-capitalist socialist economy to a market. It ain't going to happen. That's my belief. But does that mean that they're all making smart decisions? No. Does that mean that they don't have their own agendas? Does that mean that there isn't some bit of, fraudulent? There is. Just like there's some bad cops, but they aren't all bad. True. So I'm going with that belief. And the minute I've done that, I go, I don't want to watch conspiracy theories. I'm a happier guy in the last 2 months. The minute I've turned the news off, since Trump did his thing, I'll get into the politics. Once Trump did what he says he didn't do, that they're now impeaching him for. Once that happened, and I said, I'm done with watching the news.
Speaking of, they can't actually. I don't think they'll be able to impeach him now. He's a citizen. I don't know. Well, that's a whole different.
Yeah, well, here's where I'm really good now. I'm just going to show you. So it's a great question, and your conclusion is logically based. But I actually don't have to spend any time on that because it's going to evolve, and eventually there's going to be a decision I'm going to get to read. He was impeached or he wasn't impeached. I have to spend no time on it. So I'm now trained on all these kind of topics that can get you engaged, get you in, where once you make your opinion, you're now going to follow it. I avoid a lot of that now. I go, you know what, I don't even have to care because it actually doesn't matter.
It doesn't affect you.
It doesn't affect me, and he's passe. He's not there. I'm better off watching what Biden's doing vis-a-vis the pipelines or what Biden's doing vis-a-vis the second vaccine if I'm going to watch something. So I try not to get involved in these things where everybody, it's not constitutional. And this is what we're talking top lawyers. It's not constitutional. And so I say, it is constitutional. When I get two really top U.S. lawyers both saying the opposite things, I know you and I can read all we want. Yeah. We're never going to have anything other than an opinion. That's all it is.
So true.
Right?
People get pissed off about opinions that don't matter. Nothing matters.
Yeah. And if you've been in the court system, I say this to people that are going to court, and you're in the court system so long, and I give people advice on that too, is that you have to get used to staying in the now. And you need to get really good at knowing you've done your best and you can't control the outcome. Because the court system is just like the impeachment thing. Being right doesn't mean you get the judgment in your favor. And being wrong doesn't mean you lose. You're going to take all this information and all this experience, you're going to send it all in for months into the court system, and you actually think the judge is going to read it for the 2 weeks before the thing. He doesn't. The reality is they read it about 1 hour, the smack a stack, and they skirt it. And then they get to listen to two lawyers synthesize it and twist it, and then they make a judgment if there are biases involved. And I've been in court lots, and I usually win when I should win. That's the answer. I usually win when I should win. But I've lost when I should have won, a major one. I won one I should have lost, and I knew it. I was telling my lawyer to give it up. And he didn't, and we won. So I've told it, that's why it's called a judgment. And that judge has his own biases and criticism from past cases and owing people favor, whatever it is. When you go into court, you're flipping a coin, and that's why most people settle before the judgment. So that's how I actually run life. Well, when you ask me that question, there's so many, do you think they can really do it? Do you really think that's right? Really, but my opinion doesn't matter. Somebody else will make that decision, and I will read about it. I'll use it as a reference for me to make judgments when I need to. When I'm involved, otherwise, I let that go. I'm way better at letting all that shit go. I don't get involved.
Tom, how did you feel after our chat yesterday? Were you okay? Were you like, what the fuck did we just do? We had a good chat, though, I thought.
Yeah. So it's going to be hard to edit this out if we're trying to make it look like one. So you'll have to strategically.
Yeah.
So,
I will.
Yeah. So on our earlier chat before we took our break, I was excited, but I knew I was drained, and I remembered the feeling because I did once 2 speeches a day for 2 days in a row at UBC, and I collapsed after the second day. And a minister told me that I had to watch that as part of this industry, right? What you're doing, same as you listening, talking. So when I walked out, I felt tired, and I knew that. I really felt blessed that we got to connect, and I thought, who knows where this is going to go. And that's the cool part. It used to be, who knows where this is going to go financially? Well, it's not like that anymore. So it's like pretty cool. It's pretty pure, okay? That's it. It hasn't been pounded in. So I went away with that as a feeling. And then here's the interesting one. I started to remember stuff I said. I started wondering whether I said it right. And then I knew I didn't have time to clarify it. Then I forgot to put in that which would have made it more sense. And then I remembered the stuff about my dad, and before long, I was in a major shame cycle. I did not feel good about myself. I felt like I'd done something wrong. I felt dirty, Zach. And that's when I knew I got to be really careful because I didn't mean to put myself here. I got to really watch myself. So, we talked about gnats and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And my girlfriend, and my fiance, I say fiance because if I say girlfriend, she gets really upset, like I don't intend on marrying her type of thing. But I do. I love her to death. She's the best thing that's happened to me. And, whatever, don't get too corny, but yeah, it feels pretty good. She did something that kind of hurt me a little bit. And was it because I was already drained, or was it really hurtful? I didn't know, but I let her know. And I knew then I need the self-care. And I said, I'm going upstairs. And I went and fell asleep. I slept for 2 or 3 hours right after this. Mm-hmm. And then I woke up and I was still a little off, and I could tell it. But again, it's wondering whether I did good enough. Was it going to be any good? Does anybody really want to watch it? Are you going to look at it and go, oh, this fucking guy's crazy or whatever? And I was like that. So I got up this morning. I was good. And, I was like, you know what? We can clean it up. I should let you know I'm available, and that's as much as I can do. That's all that's in my control. Mm-hmm. And it is what it is. And, and I've had a great day.
That's how it should.
But I felt to do the dip, which that's called total self-awareness. And I need to do some self-care before I let something unintentionally take me out.
And Tommy, you knew you needed a rest. You went upstairs and took a nap. Yeah.
I know that from how naps have worked. And then because before, when I said I did those 2 at the universities, the outcome wasn't always that good after those 4 bang. I was so drained. I got so hit, and my brain knows what to do to get out of that really low, dark self-esteem hole, shame hole, right? So because I know that can happen, maybe it's 1 out of 20. I knew right last night that with those feelings, and it was pretty dramatic. And again, we talked and stuff that I haven't talked about that way on podcasts before. I give a pretty open. I've been giving a pretty open interview here with you, right?
Thank you.
So it makes me question things afterwards. And that's what my mind does. It always questions, should I have done this? Should I have done that? I should have done less of this. Should have done more of that. And no. But it's my head, right? It's my head. And you saying it today, I know it. I'm just really relaxed again today. But when I'm in that mode, and I could tell once I get in the shame mode, I could tell she knew she unintentionally hurt me a little bit. She was trying to do some repair stuff. I was having nothing to do with it. She was trying to show me love. I was not to be a prick about doing it. That's what happens to me when I'm shamed. I can't feel, and I don't feel whatever good. And so it's almost impossible for me to give anything because I'm drained. But it's impossible for somebody else to actually do things. So the safest thing for me to do is just go to bed and sleep. Mm-hmm. It's like I tell people that are thinking bad thoughts, I go, just get through tonight. Just trust me. Go to bed, get some sleep. I'm not telling you your problem's going away. Your feelings won't feel the same. So they're either going to be worse, call me right away, or they're not going to be quite as bad. And we need to get a string of that. But your feeling, and I can almost guarantee from the time I lay down or anybody lays down, you wake up, there's going to be a slight difference in your feeling. And I knew that. So anyway, I went to bed and I've had a good day today. I think we're having a pretty good interview.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm also, it doesn't really matter because this is me right now. This is me right now. I'm okay with it. Now, the trick is, can I stay there long where I go, I'm okay with me right now? That's my challenge in life, right? Mm-hmm. But it's a steering wheel. Nobody drives with their hands together. You're always moving. So that's why we got to stay flexible. We're not always going to be perfect, and then we're not always going to be making mistakes. And
it's the balance of everything in our life, right?
Right. It is a balance, and it isn't doing one day of this and one day of that. And that can work because then you go intellectually know your balance. Balance is an emotional, spiritual feeling. You know when you have too much of something, you can regulate. No, this is turning into greed, right? Mm-hmm. It isn't, okay, I've done 2 days, that's enough. It's a feeling. You know when you're not being that giving and compassionate and empathetic. I know when I'm not. And when I'm shut off from the ability to be compassionate and understanding, I know I'm probably reactionary and judgmental and argumentative. And my next stage is I'm a prick. And I'm closed-minded, and I don't respect you, so I'm not listening to you. Now, I don't get like that very often. But I was a lot like that as an investment banker, was very efficient. And as a leader that led, that style worked. Now, I wouldn't have been able to build a huge firm, but we sure could build a small, highly efficient, and the most profitable per person firm in the world, probably. Our rate of return per person was off the map. Our rate of return on capital was like 200% at least every year.
Tom, do you think you could have still had that drive you needed that pressure to do what you did. And what if you were Tom Budd today? Could you start an investment bank and be as successful or remotely successful?
100% sure. And I'm going to go, most people will argue against that and doubt it because it actually goes against their own belief system. So the good that I had was good, but I was missing some things and nobody told me that I was missing them. I'd never had a mentor that said, hey, Tom, based on your family, you got all this good, but trust me, I know your parents. Here's some things to start thinking about. I didn't have that. So what I did is I kept doing more and more of the good without realizing I had these big holes. So at the end of the day, what made me really good was these things. So you naturally assume if I didn't have those or have them to that level, I'd fail. But I'm going to go, the difference would have been, it's like right now, I advise people, young, I say young, like 30, 40, 45-year-olds, right? So when they come to me and they've already talked to other people in their business and their other friends, or they've gone to consultants, and they meet me and I talk to them, it's like mental health. I'm not a psychologist. People come to me and they say I'm better than their psychologist. They spend an hour with me and they feel good, okay? So if I was going to start up a mental health clinic, if I was going to help somebody, there's a guy in a marijuana company, I know he wants me on his board. I could help him be more successful, and I could be just as successful if it was investment banking. If I started right now and I had the energy and youth, I could have been as successful, but my definition of success would have been slightly different. So I still would have made a fortune. I wouldn't have made as much. I wouldn't have worked as long hours, but I still would have been considered a really hardworking guy. I wouldn't have needed to constantly win and have the feeling of hating the guy that stole my deal. I wouldn't have needed to walk into Earl and have everybody, I wouldn't have needed that, okay?
Stephen Avenue?
I would have liked that I had a really good career and I got some really good friends and I knew the difference between business friends and my friends. I wouldn't have needed to do those last 10 deals because, I just spent a great month in Asia at some ashram and did something different. So I actually believe I would have been as successful. I wouldn't have had as many secretaries quit. I wouldn't have had as many young people that didn't have the talent emotionally beat up. I wouldn't have had as many competitors, dislike me because I made sure I embarrassed them right at the right minute to get the deal, And again, that's all kind of acceptable. It's kind of like hooking in a hockey game or you drop your gloves. I don't want to. I don't fight like I used to. I don't argue like I used to. I don't have to tell people when they're wrong and make sure that because they've hurt me, I've hurt them. I don't have to do any of that. Mm-hmm. So I don't need to get I wouldn't need to get as many deals to feel good about myself because I'd already be feeling good about myself. I'd have a longer career because I'm not burnt out. I couldn't have gone any further. I should have quit earlier, but it's lucky I got as far as I did. It wasn't healthy, emotionally healthy. And that's where I go. The emotionally healthy guy, he's not going to get distracted with divorce as much. He's not going to have the same chaotic things go wrong in his life. He's not going to abuse alcohol, gambling, or other stuff, which is a distraction eventually from work. Right? So then you got to work even harder because you've been distracted. Every time you make a big mistake, you got to go clean up your mess. I don't clean up many messes anymore. So I have all that free time to do nice stuff. And nice stuff gets you business too. I would have had a slightly different marketing approach. I might not have had the nickname Rand Bud, but I probably still would have had a pretty cool nickname. And I would have been considered one of the top investment bankers in Canada. And I probably would have laughed at the guy that needed to pass me. Well, one of the guys that tried to pass me the fastest and wanted to have everything I had, and he actually asked me to be his partner at one point, was George Gosby.
Oh, yes.
And George,
you knew him?
Suffered health issues, and he committed suicide.
Yep. Did you know him well?
I knew him reasonably well, but because I didn't understand my own challenges then, I wouldn't have realized I was dysfunctional in some areas and compensate it with other things that, or I was outgrowing. Because I didn't know that about myself, I wouldn't have seen it quite in him. But I knew that whatever I might not like in myself, I saw it more in him. And some of the things that I saw myself that I really liked, I didn't see in him. And then as I retired and watched him and heard, I understood why he was doing things the way he was, because I was starting to work on my dysfunctions. So when he finally crashed, it wasn't a big surprise to me. And
what was he like? Like, what was the same characteristics you saw in each other in the downhill or the downfall?
Well,
would he overwork himself as well?
George had to be bigger. And once you talk like that, see, I was always more comfortable as an underdog. I liked number 3, number 4. I didn't like when I was all of a sudden number 1. Because, there's only one way to go, and I didn't like that way. And I wasn't quitting. And Gosby was a guy that always said he was going to do it, where I always underplayed. But once I did it, I shoved it in your face, okay? But Gosby
it was the game, of cat and mouse.
So Gosby bowled way more money. Gosby made way more promises. Gosby said he was going to do things that were pretty tough to deliver on. And eventually, the only way you can deliver on them is bending the rules and doing some other stuff.
Of course.
And, you don't think you're going to get caught, but you're going to get caught. Holy shit, that's not a good feeling, I bet. See, my fear of the law, my fear of getting in trouble, my fear of getting caught doesn't make me a better person. Those fears trump other things that I have, and those things keep me in check, where other guys will break the law. Other guys will borrow money from certain bank accounts. Certain guys will step out on their bike because whatever it is, because they don't have the same fear. It isn't that my ethics or morals are necessarily better. Maybe they are, but I'm just going to go from a fear standpoint. And to me, if I say I'm going to do something that I don't, I feel so bad. But guys like Weckerly, for instance, as a trader, I believed that he'd say it, and he could usually make it happen, but we had to control that. We had guys sitting on the desk beside him, compliance people, because if we left Mike on his own, we wouldn't be around. Well, Gosby was a lot like that.
More,
but more than me. I never set out to be the biggest and best. No. Never did. When I took on investment banking, I had no idea they made this much money. I had no idea when I took the job. Other people, before they go to university, I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to be a doctor. Yeah, I'm going to be an investment banker. They know that. They got all their dads. I was in a job interview. I didn't even know what it was.
And here you are today.
But it shows you how, you got to be at the right place at the right time. You got to know how to capitalize. But I sure found out what investment banking was, and then figured out what are the traits an investment banker does. And those are the things that I started reading. Yeah.
So I got to ask you one question. What made you buy a Thompson? Do you want to talk about that or nah?
Yeah, no, these are all great stories, actually, when I think about it.
You have the funniest stories, and I bet you have so many.
I do when people remind me, so I haven't even thought of it. So the answer to that story right afterwards would have been different than the answer 3 or 4 years later, where now I'm one of the biggest collections. I have 34 to 40
pieces of art.
Pieces of art from the group of 7. There's a group of 7 or group of 8. I can't remember. Group of 7.
7, yeah.
And then I got a bunch of Emily Carrs. I have four Tom Thompsons now, by the way. So, but my answer now, from a mental health perspective, I know exactly why I bought that. But it's complicated, and it was one of those things I needed to do to distract me. It's one of those things that looks like it's fun, it's an investment, it isn't. It's called a shopping compulsion, except because I hate spending money, I spend more time on the investigation and the chasing and the acquisitions just a little bit, where some people can go shop, run home, take it back, get their money, shop, take it home, go back. That's all the same thing. Like, there's another way of me to keep my mind occupied. So I always found new projects and new collections. So I collected cars, I collected art. I had the biggest wine collection in Western Canada. So the Tom Thompson one, how it was, but you got to remember, it's all tied to the mental health dysfunctions that I had. But I was in Vancouver, and And paper came under the door, and I was in recovery, and I'm into spirituality and stuff. And this, for whatever reason, I opened it to a page, and there was a big ad for a Thompson. And the way the ad was presented and whatever, it stuck out at me. And it was something different. And I'm trying to be open-minded. I said, oh, this is amazing. I'm in Vancouver, so I got to relax. I don't have to be running. I don't have to get my exercise in. We'll have a coffee. I'm going to read about this. And I did. I went downstairs, so I read about the thing, and then I Googled, this group of 7. Then I Googled the artist, and then I'm finding myself intrigued with this, which is like, man, I get this tingly feeling, like an out-of-body ketamine experience. Okay, so it's like I can do that without the drugs. Okay, because I can disassociate. So I'm in a disassociated state. I'm reading and I'm tingling. It's cool. And I'm reading about this Thompson. And he loved the the Algonquin, and
on the canoeing.
Yeah, and he loved canoeing, and he loved fishing, and he's up in this part of the country where I used to go with my best friend, and we hitchhiked into all these places, and then it had like intrigue because he disappeared, because it sounded like he had an affair with somebody that had a cabin on that lake, and all of a sudden she was murdered and he disappeared and whatever. And I don't know, but I got like really into this guy's name and story. And anyway, that was that for that day or that weekend. And the next thing I do, I'm in Calgary for car racing, and all of a sudden, all over the radio and a big front page of the newspaper, big art show, Thompson for sale. It's like this thing. It's now that day, and I didn't know it when I went to Calgary, and this is tied back to 2 months earlier reading the pre-marketing advertisement in Vancouver. So I go, oh, that's kind of interesting, but tough luck, I'm here racing cars. So off to Race City I went, and I'm racing around, and and all of a sudden either it rained or I blew an engine. It's one of the two, but it's 2 o'clock, and I go, oh, that art auction is probably on. I got lots of time left in the day. I gotta stay busy. I should find out. So I get on the flight. This Tom, is that? Oh, it's the last piece. Well, when's it going? Oh, you'll hold it until I get there? I didn't really realize that I had that kind of whatever clout, but they knew who I was, and I might have called them ahead of time. So I whip over, sweaty t-shirt, jeans, cowboy boots, whatever, coming off the racetrack, and I go into this big art auction, never been in one. And it's filled with reporters and people in suits, and there's cheese plates and wine and hors d'oeuvres.
And here you are.
I've been there, but I bid on stocks, I bid on companies, I bid on business, and I know how to size up a room. So I'm in there sizing up, and I'm watching who the camera's trying to be close. I'm watching who the newspaper people are trying to be close. And you can see there's a bit of a lull, and they're waiting up. They're all going to do the big finale, like an Oscar award. He goes up there and he gives the big preamble. He goes, no, got this Thompson, and the floor bid is $400,000, and anybody at $600,000, okay, 550, 500. It's clearly not going the right way, but who knows? So anyway, it eventually gets down to like 450, 450, and he goes, if this thing doesn't sell for 400, it's not going to sell to anybody. He tried to get 400 for it, and he couldn't. And he says, if we don't get a bid for this, if we don't get a good bid for this thing will never sell for a long time again. He going, okay, 400. Anybody? Well, somebody bid something. I bid 350. 351, 350, anybody else, 400, 400, come on, somebody go 400. And he stayed at 400 forever. I noticed that. He's going 400, come on, somebody 400, come on, somebody 400, 375, 355, is the 350 still there? 350's there. I've never done this, but I'm thinking, I'm going to get a lot of press. I already know I'm going to get mobbed by the press. Tom Budd, investment banker, I'm back in the city of my business. And he goes, well, okay, I guess it's not selling. I go, pardon?
Oh, you called it out? You said it?
It's a reserve bid. And I said, no, that's not right. You have to sell to me. Nobody knows reserve bid. You obviously don't know auctions. You don't know this. Tries to shame me. Poor boy from Moncton nonsense, right? I'm not dressed like them. Don't come from them. Just like the investment banking business, he'll never last. He's so different. All the guys that he said, right? Anyway, I go, bullshit. I know words. You said, if somebody doesn't bid now, this is going away. I bid. You didn't put a condition on it. He goes, yeah, but you have to read. I go, that's nonsense. It's up to you. Full, true, and plain disclosure. I go, by the way, if we don't, you need to say that. You can't bait me to bid, hoping to use me and my money to get somebody else up. And somebody, look at that, Dolphins right up there right now. Cool.
Oh.
Anyway, I'm letting them have it. And you can see the floor is dividing. People are cheering me on. And some of the hootie-tooties aren't, because I don't know my art auction rules. I know fairness rules. And I know bullshit, you know. And I said, fine, I'm done. I stormed out, and I knew what I was doing. I stormed out. I didn't leave the building. I stormed out and went to a back corner where there was most room. Every person in there associated with the newspapers, radio, and TVs were all over me.
Okay.
And they wanted to know what I thought and explain it. And they really wanted me to lay out, Heffel it was called, Heffel. And Heffel sees it going on. They know they got a problem, but I was smart enough. Don't lay them out. Talk about why I'm right. Talk in a conciliatory manner that you assume is going to be fixed. I don't know that it's done. I've left. I haven't drawn a line in the sand. You know, clearly, Next thing I know, somebody comes busting through the radio and say, Mr. Bud, would you meet over in the concierge? Mr. Heffel wants to talk to you. So we got in there, and I'm going to tell you, I'm impressed. Because while we were in there and their phones are ringing off the hook, and all these professional bidders that were on through Zoom back then, TV, they were already in bidding 400 and 450 because they didn't think that would happen. They didn't realize I would bid. I caught everybody off guard. Then I started fighting, and they had all hoped they'd get off the phone and call Heffel and go, hey, we're gonna do, we'll give you 4 and a quarter, no commission, whatever. But I got him. And he said, okay, here's how it really works, but it didn't. You got a point. We don't need the press, because I let them know, you know what, I've been good, but I don't get that painting. You won't be doing another auction the same way here in Calgary. Okay.
And you wanted that painting. You were not going to leave without that painting, in a way.
Yeah, I was getting it. It doesn't matter. But I also knew that it's all part of the training. He's in a bind because he told his client that when there's a floor place, you'll get that or it won't sell. So he technically isn't allowed to sell or he breaks his contract with her to me for $350. I also didn't let him off, although I knew I would. And he said, but I could call her and try. And I'm going, she's had this in her garage for X number of years. She's 87 years old. If you told her it was $250, she would have taken it. If you said there was no floor bid, we'll do her best, she'd be happy as a pig. And you know what? For $350,000. And he goes, okay, he's not arguing with me, which is what I like. No, at least on the same level. But he undertook to talk to her to see if he could get her to $350. And if he could get the $350 with all the stuff, but I agreed to at least move it up to some price so they can make it look like a higher price. And I said yes. And while that was happening, they had phone calls. I knew that they were getting bids. So I already know they can sell this painting for way more than I'm going to pay for it. I figured there's a good chance he's just going to go screw it. She won't sell it to us at that price. And we have a $450 bid. So if you match it at $450, you can have it. That's what I was expecting. The head of Heffel, and this is publicity for them, came back in. He goes, you know, we're in a kind of a tight spot. We did get her. He's aware of the situation. He's happy at, you know, some price and da-da-da. If we all could just say it was 400, you don't pay any commission. And the commission would have put me through 400 anyway, believe it or not. The commissions are huge, just 20%. So I would have been 400 and a little at 350. So doing it publicly at 400 wasn't costing me any money. I was paying the 20% on them, and we just say it like, yep, I'm good. But he came in and he told me that he liked the way I did it. He wanted to honor it. And his biggest problem was that he had bids he could give her more money. And he had to turn those bids down. And I didn't think he'd follow through with it. And I said, you know, that's fine, but they didn't come in time. They don't owe you nothing. You know, and she's doing it fairly too. Anyway, he did the deal. I got the painting. That painting's worth about $1.6 million right now.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
And it's not, how many years ago?
I bought 3 more. I traveled around the country to every major art thing with a new date and a fancy car. And I walked in and everybody knew who taught, and I knew nothing about what I was doing. I was buying Lauren Harris, Emily cars. I had no clue, except I knew when I was in a market where everybody was bidding everything and you know what auctions are like. And I knew enough, stay out of those, drink, buy one or two things, and I'd be at others, and I could just tell by the tone and the way people are acting that, people aren't into art this year. And I'd walk out with $6 or $7 million worth. I was all in paint. If I bought more than anyone. And I have a huge collection though.
Yeah, Thompson, they're just going to go up. They're just one of those things. Yeah. It's a history, right? Canadian history.
Yeah.
And then now you have a flag.
I've done to have some fun, and as I've taken my will and all my friends and friends' kids and whatever, and all the lower priced pieces of art, I've identified their piece of art. So if these things stay off the market for the longest possible time ever, that'll be what I give out for my inheritances.
That's nice.
And clearly, everybody will make money at some point. Right?
And you have a flag. You got to talk about your flag that you have. That is an interesting thing that you have. If you still have it.
Yeah, I still have it. Yeah. So the flag's another one of those kind of stories where, I get into these things where I get a passion or a belief, and it's ever since I went on a spirituality things, I'll see things and I'll go, there's a reason. So again, I saw something once on, this Canadian flag, and for whatever reason, and get into the article. And I know when I don't normally do it, it's an off behavior. And I read about this Canadian flag, and it's in a roll, and it's never been touched, and it's never been opened. And, you can have flags all the time, and they're tattered and they're torn, and they have a certain value. But this is one that's never been opened. It's still in the wrap. It's like mint original condition. And I'm reading about it, and they value it. And it talks about, hopefully it'll stay in Canada, hopefully it'll be the Canadian Museum. And I saw it. And I also knew there was part of an art show. So I said, I'll make this, I'm going to go down and I'm going to try to buy that flag. That was my goal. The goal was to buy that flag and bring it back and put it in the big glass portable case. And my son Dylan was a history buff, and he loved Army stuff, and he collected Army gear and Army helmets and gas masks. So he liked the idea. His dad was going to run. I was going to lend this flag. It had the 4 provinces emblem. That was it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And there at the time, it had a value. When I got there, you got to kind of check out who's who, and you talk to people who's bidding. The bidding started, and I was warned ahead of time. There was a bunch of U.S. museums or places that wanted to buy it, and for some reason, I wanted it to stay in Canada. And don't ask me why. I'm not that peachy about it. Maybe I didn't like Trump then. I don't know. But, I met him when I was young. I met him when I was young too, by the way. Funny story. But in any event, I'm at the flag, and this thing's going for way too high of a price, and I'm told it's all U.S. bidders. I kind of was there, and I said, "Fuck, I can't let it happen." So I just kept matching the bid. Whatever they bid, I bid, and I eventually bought it for way more than it was worth. But it's in Canada, and in that moment, and that time, and for years, it gave me pleasure, and it hangs in the main foyer of my house. And my one son always, would be one of those things he talked like, John's at school, you got to bring to school. And now it becomes one of those negative things. It makes me think of my son. It makes me sad. It's probably going to be one of the things I eventually sell. It doesn't give me the same pleasures. It's a fun story when I think about it. It was kind of another one of those bumptisms. And
No.
Yeah.
Anyway. I love talking to you, by the way. Hey, I met this guy. I don't know if you might know him from back in the day in Calgary. Jim Kinnear.
I know Jim Kinnear real well. So, have you ever brought my name up to Jim Kinnear?
Never.
He'd have some funny stories.
Yeah, I only met him one time. That one time.
He'd have some funny Tom Budd stories because, he came into the business and his background was Eastern Canada. Yeah. The right family in the right place, went to the right school, and Jim was groomed the right way. So, the way Jim would dress, present himself, and his background, and we're going to go all that positive. I'm the anti that. Okay? And that's how it would look. It'd be kind of like if all of a sudden I went to a golf course back when I met Jim. Jim would be with a group of guys, and Jim was a good guy, by the way. Yeah. Some of the other guys, they'd be looking over at me about what I have for golf shoes, shorts, my swing, clubs.
Oh gosh, like judgmental. Yeah.
I did not fit in. I did not act right. I didn't follow the protocol. Where Jim followed it perfectly. He did it because that's how he was brought up, not because he was trying to be, whatever. But Jim, when he first came out, he really wasn't doing that well in the business, and I was. He tried to get to know me. And then all of a sudden, these trusts became popular. And he happened to own one that no one had an interest in for years and years and years. And it wasn't like Jim or others knew it's eventually going to happen. He did it. They had these things and managed them. And all of a sudden, the market had an interest in trusts. And the next thing you know, Jim Kinnear has put a bunch of these ugly looking trusts together, and he's running Penn Growth, and he's got the name of the Saddle Dome after him. It's a story of right place at the right time. And interesting guy.
Yeah, you only met him once, but I don't play golf either, so I'm with you.
Yeah. Well, Jim would have his favorite places that he'd like to go, and and Jim was a pretty good conversationalist. And
if anybody wants to learn more about mental health, how do they reach out to you, and how can they help support you? Because you do so much for the community and bring awareness to this cause.
Yeah. So for me, I want to give back in two ways. I want to use my financial resources where I can in mental health, but I also want to be able to use my time and my knowledge and experience to help others that need help. So that's what I want to do. And one of the ways that people that want to help me that don't need my help, is they can volunteer for my organization, and they can find us on the tabf.ca, Thomas Allen Budd Foundation.ca website. And there's a place there where they can contact me and volunteer and be part of some of our events, or they can donate. And I would say, if people wanted to, or they've seen what I've done or heard what I've done, and they just believe in what I'm doing, is donate into the Payton Dylan Budd Memorial Fund. And that's part of the same website, Thomas Allen Budd. It's right there. There's a button to press. And they could donate, and that's specifically for mental health. And I will then match it. So whatever they donate, I will match. And we do that every quarter, whatever funds come in. So they can contact me for help, have a conversation, or they can contact me to help me in volunteering if you live in Kelowna, or financially, we'll obviously accept that at any time.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Zach. And let's stay in touch.
All right.
Bye.